So, why do I have Esther listed when she's not here? And Phyllis?
It was sitting right here.
And Phyllis? You guys don't need your script.
She's here. She was right here. Yeah.
Okay. But,
Oh, I think she's right outside the door over there.
Bimla, Anita.
There she is.
את מתנדבת כבר, כן? ויש לך דרשה? I'm not doing the sermon tonight. Didn't you get the memo?
Hine.
Matov.
Matov.
Uba.
Uma.
Naim.
Naim.
Sheverachim,
Sheverachim gam yachad.
Hine. Matov.
Matov.
Uma.
Uma.
Naim.
Naim. Sheverachim gam yachad.
Hine Matov.
Hine matov.
Uma Naim.
Uma naim.
Sheverachim.
Sheverachim
Gam Yachad.
gam
Big
yachad.
finish. Hine Matov.
Hine matov.
Uma Naim.
Uma naim.
Sheverachim.
Sheverachim
Gam Yachad.
gam yachad. Hine matov naim. Sheverachim gam yachad. Hine matov naim. Sheverachim gam yachad.
Hine Matov Manayim. Sheverachim Gam Yachad. Little sliver of the newborn baby moon up there at Birkat Levana, Kiddush Levana, very important early in the month when you see the moon smiling at you. Preferably Saturday night, or in this case Friday night, when we're dressed in our Shabbat best. We make the bracha, Baruch Yotzrech, Baruch Osech, Baruch Konech, Baruch Vorech. And when you write that all down, the initial letters spell Yaakov, because we're the children of Israel. So, welcome aboard. And those distance davening with us, happy to have you joining us, however virtually, from our congregation website. We hope before live streaming you made occasion the opportunity to download a copy of our satellite Siddur to keep you in orbit. Following along, we'll shout out the page numbers from time to time. You participate on your end as well. Happy to have everyone. You, on satellite Siddur, you're right up front. In-house, though, we need to open to page 1 for love. Hopes and nurture. May the door of the synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May the synagogue be for all who enter the doorway to a richer and more meaningful. Hanita, if you'd honor us, my lady, let us turn back a couple pages to 121 for our Shabbat evening Adlakat Nerot, benching licht.
Put it here. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של שבת. Source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Please join me.
Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offering of their hearts. Their worship leadest acts of kindness, peace.
Please, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר להדליק נר של שבת.
On page 142.
שלום עליכם מלאכי השרת מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא בכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ברכוני לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא צאתכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Satellite Sidur, you're at the bottom of page 2, in-house, page 144. Chatzi Kaddish is a transition from Kabbalat Shabbat into our evening worship service.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבם ועל מה דברך יראותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יש מי רבם מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשם
בריחו
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמה.
Amen. We rise for the call to worship, page 146.
Responsively. ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Even as we rise out of respect when the judge enters a courtroom, when the king enters his throne room to hold court, so can we resume our seats once more as we turn the page and prepare for the recitation of the Shema. Several prayers on facing pages on 2 pages in a row, giving us the balance to focus in meditation on what makes the Shema so unique. This first prayer, turn inward and ponder one of the prospects of God's unknowability as the transcendent creator of the universe, before we then proceed to turn the page and sing with our cantor the second prayer that speaks of God's immanence as our covenant partner.
Baruch atah Adonai Ha'amariv Arayim.
Amen.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים וניס מברי תורתך ומצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימים מעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ברוך שם גדול מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת אלה אשר אנוכי מצווך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסיף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסיף אלה. מלכותך ובניך, וכי היום לפני משה, לילי ענו ויאמרו זה איני, ענו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך ועד. ונאמר כי פד אדוני את יעקב וגר מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. יא אלוהי
After the power of the song of the sea, the serenity of a bedtime prayer, page 160. I invite everyone to ponder, we've taken to doing this recently, why Hashkivenu is so significant. Until Edison, everyone went to bed when it got dark out. Until Edison, everyone was fearful once it got dark out. Let the inner child out of the cage and remember how scary it is when you can't see what's outside the window, or what's under the bed, or the monsters in the closet if the door is left ajar. Let us capture that primal fear. And from our kishkits, down towards the bottom of the page, ask God in our bedtime prayer together to defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, O God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and our coming to life and to peace evermore. And with feeling, blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem.
Baruch atah Adonai haporis ukal shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai haporis ukal shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haporis ukal shalom. Shalom aleinu
Shalom aleinu.
ve'al kol amo Yisrael. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam b'rit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam b'rit olam. B'ni u'b'in b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam. Oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam b'rit olam. Ki sheshet yomim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam b'rit olam. Vayom hashri Shabbat vayinafash. Shabbat vayinafash. Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam b'rit
In our Sidurim, Satellite Sidur, middle of page 7, in-house in the big book, page 164, which shouldn't be very far from where we are right now, like the next page. Now, tefillah at the top of the page means prayer with a capital P, or in this case with a capital Taf. But I want you to notice, Hebraists, the Taf, the T at the beginning has a dagesh in the middle because it has to. Grammatically speaking, a Taf at the beginning of the word has to have a dagesh. But notice, even if you're not a Hebrew reader, that third letter from the right, and that, by the way, cover the bottom half, so that all that's sticking out is the thing in the top and the horizontal. This is the origin of the letter L, a lamed. Looks just like an L, doesn't it? You chop off the bottom part, which was originally a flourish. But notice that has a dot in the middle too. The dot is called dagesh, emphasis. And from the viewpoint of grammarians, it is a geminative. Think Gemini, twins. It means that there's actually two lameds, one on top of each other. But since in Hebrew we hate to waste ink and the handwriting material, the parchment, it's, very labor intensive, so we always double down and put a dot as a reminder. The reason that's significant, I want you to let this be a meditative focus. Prayer with a capital P is always there because Taf has to have a dagesh in it. But the lamed in the middle, by the time in the middle we start losing interest, running out of gas, the part in the middle comes from the part in our middle, our own dagesh, right there going ba-bump, ba-bump. From our heart. Let us reach inward to double down on our prayers at a time of strangeness and uncertainty as we rise together. And before we, however, conceptually step apart, by standing together, we proclaim together the words of the psalmist, Adonai sfatai tiftach ufi agid tilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Oh, I have
Ve'ado Afkid ruchi Ve'etishan ve'ayra Ve'il ruchi givniati Adonai Eloira Ve'im ruchi givniati Adonai Elohim.
Well, how did I had knocked this down to B flat. As we've come back together in song, humming along with the cantor, hopefully somebody was singing with the cantor. Nobody was waltzing with the cantor. Notice that. She opened up with a jubilant chora. Nobody was dancing in the aisles. Now we're doing a waltz. Everyone's still in their seats. We need to get a charismatic Hebrew congregation here. You know, the Hasidim didn't originate as, quote, ultra-Orthodox. They originated as antinomian, Dionysian spiritualists who got up and danced in the aisle. You want to be a real, authentic Jew. Kavanah, hitlahavut, a fabrenta chassid. Coming back together in prayer and in song, we offer prayer in song for members of our congregation who, even on this sweet Shabbat of the new moon, the new month, the new possibilities, lie on beds of illness or preparing for recovering from surgery. Your Rebbitzin, who wanted to be here last week to say Kaddish with her temple family for my beloved mother-in-law, but who wasn't up for 2 nights away, sleeping on a flat bed at our local hotel. So she's home, maybe watching, maybe playing with our grandchildren. She got invited over for Shabbat dinner in Boca. I couldn't get back in time, so I'm here. For all who lie on beds of illness or preparing for, recovering from surgery, awaiting test results, or looking to break out of invidious cycles of anxiety and addiction and pain and fear. So many people in need of so many different kinds of healing. Members of our own congregation, Leah Jacobson, Joan Enbert Thompson, Bert Posner, Roberta Schwartz, Jane Barron, Joanne Blau, Shirley Posner, Larry Satcher, Beth Pavlo hugging us from the back row, Steve Roberts, Herb Wallach, Alan Zuckerman, George Karpman, Belle Finfer, Lynn Wilk, our cantor Harry still healing up from her surgery, Rebbitzin Carol, Mike Sufia newly on the list, and the kinfolk and friends of our congregants for whom our prayers have been asked, for John Vernon, Julie Fitzgerald, Susan Donahue, Margaret Gallivan, Marianne Mulligan, Linda Gagnon, Christy Raymond, Brandon Ben Sharon, Teddy Emerson, Rosa Footlick, Barbara Kretschmar, Mary Finnessand, Pete Carochi, Paula McIver, Sandy Footlick, Karen DeSessa, Jim McDonald, Alba McDonald, Marjorie Sarmiento, Bernie and Barbara Friedrich, Nan Needleman, Rick Wilkie, Elaine Veneman, Mayor Ben Chava Fega, Paul Piper, Eva LaCava Hughes, Orlando Cesares, our custodian back in the saddle, and we're happy to have him on both feet again. Virginia Footlick, Tom Boucher, Scott Snyder, Martha Eldridge Stark, and Barbara and Steve Dukeman. And anyone whose names we might like to add out to our prayer list, please shout out. And those at home, don't be bashful about calling out. We'll be sure to hear it on this end, however virtually, as together we share this prayer for healing with our cantor.
Mishaberach Otenu B'kol habracha Limotenu with a source of strength to bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. שברך אמותינו מקור הברכה לאבותינו, the souls in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Frank Weinberg, young man, if you'd come forth and honor us by introducing Kiddush for the cantor to lead. And if you do a really good job, we'll let you not only be the designated drinker, but also slice the challah. How's that for a package deal? The original BOGO.
The seventh day is consecrated to the eternal God. On Shabbat, eternal sign of creation, we remember that we are created in the divine image. We therefore raise the cup in thanksgiving. Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tzion mitzrayim kivanu v'chata ve'atanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'b'ratzon inchatanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat.
Tovim leim barukim. Wait, Frank, hold that cup. Wait.
Delicious.
I'm glad you like it. You've been deputized by the cantor to help with the drinker.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz v'te'amon.
And this is a Bob Holla.
Oh, that's all we have. Only the best. I want you to know, we've obviated guests having to come up to get their challah because we got in-flight service here. We spoil people. But don't miss out on our island challah. This is a Bob Jerry special. The man is a master. He's the sorcerer's apprentice, and now he's the master.
Hava nagila, hava nagila, hava nagila v'nismecha. Hava nagila, hava nagila, hava nagila v'nismecha. Hava niranana, hava niranana, hava niranana v'nismecha. Hava niranana, hava niranana, hava niranana v'nismecha. Urachim, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim b'lev sameach.
And there you have it again. Nobody was hora-ing in the aisle. Is hora legitimately a verb? I'll defer to the Israelis. Lirkod cha'a. Is a laharot. Lahorot. Ani mora. No, I'm armed. Well, it doesn't work grammatically. It just doesn't work out. There's so many exciting things to talk about this week. We could ponder the question of, whether America is still a leader of the world or been left behind by the rest of it, or uncertainty about our economy. I have an answer for that one. Uncertainty about the economy. For those in our age group who funded our pensions based on the days when the individual-sized bag of Frito cost 5 cents, find that today it's $2.65, so we're behind in the dust. I have an opportunity to enhance your underfunded retirement. Beg me to tell you how. I'm glad you asked. Arrange with somebody amongst the powers that be to get $1 for every time the spiritual leader of the Jewish congregation of Marco Island makes reference to our fabulously ancient people. And you'll be rich in no time. How often do I mention our fabulously ancient people? All the time, every single week, at least once every Shabbat. So, okay, let's not talk about the rest of the world. Let's not talk about the United States. Just to talk about us. You know what's cool about being a fabulous ancient people? Many things, but particularly the advantage of longevity is perspective of distance. I love to tell the story, so you've heard it before. My dentist on the Pacific coast was the rabbi of the Monterey Peninsula before coming back to Florida in 1986. In the early 80s, he's telling me a story. One of his patients was 104 years old. So Dr. Turner asked him, what's the most amazing things you've seen happen in your life? And he figures to talk about jet travel or the moon landing. And the fellow, looking up with a little paper bib, looks up into the light, squinting, and says, painless dentistry and fly screening. When you've been around a while, you get a sense of perspective. We Jews have been around a while, our fabulously ancient people, and so we have the perspective of distance and a talent for taking what the British call the long view. A sense of proportion and context. Consider, we miss the point of Jewish history when we tell Jewish history, think of Jewish history, and worst of all, teach our children Jewish history as a series of massacres, expulsions, and crematoria. Think about it. This is one of my strong biases, the bee in my bonnet, as an educational director when I first got out of seminary and started in the rabbinical field. I was the educational director of the shul. And it irritated me that the teachers were talking about expulsion and the Crusades and the Nazis. I said, what are you really telling children? What kids are getting from this is you have to be Jewish so that the next generation of anti-Semites will have somebody to hate. That was not the perspective of Salo Baron, one of the most amazing scholars of the 20th century. Baron, by the time he was 25, had been ordained by the rabbinical seminary in Vienna and held 3 PhDs. We brought him to teach at the Jewish Institute of Religion in New York, which merged with the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati after World War II. Rabbi Professor Herr Dr. Baron was born in Tarnow, Galicia, at a time when there were 22,000 Jews there, when he had testified before and supported the war crimes tribunals in 1945 as one of the premier Jewish historians in the world. He recorded that there were only 20 Jews left in Tarnow. So this is a man who understood firsthand trauma, tragedy, disaster, and yet there's nothing that irritated Salo Baron more than what he called, and I love this, because this is a sort of vocabulary that only a man fluent in 7 languages teaching at Columbia would come up with, the lachrymose view of Jewish history. Think of the lachrymose glands, where the tears come from. This tearful, hand-wringing, eternal victims. Baron, who saw the community he was born in liquidated by the Nazis, had no patience for us to teach Jewish history as a string of traumas. The first thing is the intended lesson in telling children about all the traumas we've confronted and survived, the tragedies we've endured and survived. It's supposed to teach about resilience of the Jewish people. Why is there an egg on the Seder plate? I could tell you, but it's not worth explaining. Come back Sunday and ask the rabbi session. But why is there an egg on the Seder plate? Because the Yiddish wits say, and the Israeli Zionists say, because the Jews are like an egg. The more you boil us, the tougher we become. The lesson of teaching the tragedies is our resilience. Top of the head, pop quiz, double dessert. Who can remember my last words concluding last week's sermon? Af seloches alles seinem am Yisrael chai. In spite of every possible enemy, if only to tick off the people that for stupid reasons of their own hate us, the Jewish people will keep on ticking like a timeless watch. I want to ask John and June and Sue, our Israel travelers from the 2017 or 2019 pilgrimages to Israel, what was my constant refrain, sitting on top of Masada, pointing down to the camp of the 10th Roman Legion, Flavius Silva, and letting you pass around artifacts, a Roman sling bullet, a Roman trilobe arrow, touching the experience of what happened here where they thought they were ending Jewish history. And what was my constant refrain everywhere we went in Israel? And when was the last time you met a Roman? But we're still here. Mark Twain made a better case for that. The Jews, he writes, have made a marvelous fight in this world in all the ages and have done it with their hands tied behind their backs. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up, held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now, or have vanished. The Jews saw them all, endured them all, and are now what they always were, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of their parts, no slowing of their energies. So that's the first thing. All those lessons about the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans and the Babylonians and the Arabs and the Crusaders and the Nazis is to point out how resilient we are, because that points to the second thing. We endured because we stood for something. We are Yisrael, the ones who struggle, sometimes with, but always for God. Cecil Roth, the great British historian, says, it is the sense of brit, of being in a covenantal relationship with God, that has given the Jews the will to endure. We are, long before the Blues Brothers came up with the idea, on a mission from God. Our ritual and our tradition, ever since Fiddler on the Roof, we think we have a copyright on that word. Our ritual and our tradition are expressions of purpose, engines of continuity, spiritual grounding for who we are, a break from the oppression outside, and a connection with each other across the generations, which is why the wonderful Israeli philosopher a century ago, Ahad Ha'am, wrote, more than the people of Israel has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the people of Israel. The third thing, maybe the least important, but I think one of the most interesting, our longitudinal history makes us the record keepers of humanity. How many civilizations can you name on earth that have a longitudinal history going back 4,000 or 5,000 years and are still around today? It's a short list. The people of the Nile Valley in Egypt, the people of the Indus Valley in Italy, the people of the Yangtze River Valley in China, and the Jews. The difference between them being that the Chinese, the Egyptians, and the Indians are vast populations that have spent their whole national history in their national homeland. We're a puny little slice of humanity spread like too little butter over too much bread over the face of the earth. And there's one other consideration. While the Chinese, I guess, still speak Chinese, they're officially godless communists and don't have a religion anymore. They had 5 religions in the first place they couldn't agree about, but they don't have any. The people of the Indus Valley can't decide about their religion. They have 4. And the people of the Nile Valley are all Muslims now, and it took a 19th century Frenchman to teach them how to read hieroglyphics. We're still spread out all over, but still speaking Hebrew, still being us. And having been around so long, like those civilizations, but being everywhere, we are the record keepers of humanity. 2,600 years ago, 605 BCE, this will be on the test. The Battle of Carchemish in what is today Syria, up at the headwaters of the Euphrates. The Egyptians and Assyrians made common cause against the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The army of Nebuchadnezzar, under the command of his son, Nebuchadnezzar, triumphed, defeated the Egyptians, and it was a watershed in world history. As it happens, read about it in the Bible, 2 Kings chapter 24. We were there because, amongst other things, Israel, which had been part of Egypt, now became part of Babylonia. And it was Nebuchadnezzar who, when we refused to pay our taxes, we talked about that one last week, took us away into exile, al naharot Bavel sham yashavnu gam bachinu, to the waters of Babylon, where we sat and wept. 325 CE, this side of the line. Early in the 4th century, a council of Nicaea was held between the various Christian sects and denominations of the world to avoid going to war, to reach consensus of, okay, what do we all agree on? And those who visited a church know that they still recite the Nicene Creed as a doctrine, as a pledge of allegiance. Most significantly, from our viewpoint, they address the question of the nature of Trinity. Is God one in 3 persons, or 3 sides of the same prism? The Christians still can't agree on that. And different heretical sects occasionally bash each other over the head to this day over the question. But we Jews know because we were there. Find out about it in the Talmud, eyewitnesses. Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 2, which is the opening page. They address the question, this new religion, the thing with the cross, they said, are they polytheists or not? And the consensus of the rabbis is no. In other words, the Christians weren't taking careful notes and weren't sure what they were decided about Trinity, but the rabbis paid close attention, and we recorded it's not polytheist because it's 3 sides of one prism. It's what the rabbis would call shituf, a party, a participation, but not 3 separate gods. In 1189, the Third Crusade, out of 12, the Third Crusade to try to take back Jerusalem, had been conquered by Saladin 2 years earlier. We were there. Look at the last verse, Ma'oz Sur, Hanukkah. We do the first verse in Hebrew and then a metrical version in English by the great British Zionist Israel Zangwill. But do all 6 verses. The last line in the last verse says, Deche Admon Betzel Salmon Admon. What color is that? Adom? Red. This is a reference to the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa. This is an Ashkenazic hymn that dates to the time of the Third Crusade in 1189. We were there. And we sing the hymn to this day, every Hanukkah, assuming you get down to the 6th verse. And here's a fun thing. Ever remember Moses Maimonides, every Jewish mother's dream? He was a rabbi and a doctor. The nature of medieval warfare, because of the nature of the feudal system, it was, chivalry. They were all gentlemen. Saladin, when he found out that one of Richard Coeur de Lion, Richard I of England, one of his noblemen was a knight that was severely wounded in battle, said, well, we have to get him the best medical care possible. I will send you an escort under a flag of truce to escort him to Cairo, where in the city of Fustat you will find Musa ibn Maimun, the greatest physician in the world. Maimonides lives right next door to where the Crusades are going on, where the Christians and the Muslims are beating each other over their head. We were there. And throughout subsequent ages, Jewish individuals, sometimes communities, sometimes whole populations have been witness to and participants in global exploration in the 16th century, the rise of Nova Scientia in the 17th, the humanistic enlightenment of the 18th, the rise of the modern nation state in the 19th, and the globalization of the human family in the 20th. We have at some point or another lived everywhere on Earth, and that includes the South Pole. When Richard Byrd flew on his exploration, Admiral Byrd took along in 1928 an airplane mechanic named Benny Roth, who brought with him talis, tefillin, Passover matzah, and a Hanukkah menorah because he was going to be at the South Pole for 3 years and he wanted to be prepared. Ponder that history and consider that the white supremacists, the bigots and neo-Nazis amongst our neighbors today, describe Jews as, wait for it, cosmopolitan, which in their vocabulary is a dark intimation of a conspiracy. But hey, we take it as a compliment because it's bearing witness to our global presence for the last 2,000 years. And as important, our associated positive impact on the human family vastly out of proportion to our tiny numbers. So if you want to talk about Jewish exceptionalism, don't believe your rabbi, believe Will Durant, one of the premier philosopher historians of the 20th century. Will and Ariel together wrote a magnificent encyclopedic history of all the major philosophers. But just for fun, Will himself came up with a solo volume introducing a dozen of the most important. And in introducing Baruch Spinoza, the Portuguese refugee who revolutionized the Protestant Reformation and Jewish thought, the 17th century in Amsterdam, Will Durant opens the story of Spinoza by putting him in context as a Jew. This is the opening paragraph of that chapter. The story of the Jews is one of the great epics of history. This already ancient people, driven from their natural home by the Roman capture of Jerusalem in the 1st century, and scattered by flight and trade among all the nations and all the continents, persecuted and decimated by the adherents of the great religions which had born of their scriptures and their memories, barred by the feudal system from owning land and by the guilds from taking part in industry, shut up within congested ghettos and narrowing pursuits, mobbed by the people and robbed by the kings, building with their finance and trade the towns and cities indispensable to civilization, outcast and excommunicated, insulted and injured, yet without any political structure, without any legal compulsion to social unity, this wonderful people has maintained itself in body and soul, has preserved its racial and cultural integrity, has guarded with jealous love its oldest rituals and traditions, has patiently and resolutely awaited the day of its deliverance, and has emerged greater in numbers than ever before, renowned in every field for the contribution of its geniuses. Having written that in 1926, he then added in the 1953 edition, and triumphantly restored, after 2,000 years of wandering, to its ancient and unforgotten home. In other words, friends, bottom line, one of the most prestigious American historians of the 20th century agrees with your rabbi that our fabulously ancient people are just as fabulous as I keep telling you. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom. Greetings from our Board of Directors and a few announcements. I welcome visitors worshiping with us tonight, and I invite you to stay on hand for the Oneg Shabbat following services. Tonight's Oneg was coordinated by Mitch Braun, Bob Jarrett, Heather Greenfield, Sandra Heckler, Barbara Holtz, Mary Pinto, Linda Reitzes, Phyllis Rosenblum, Robin Singer, Beth Weinberg, and Lynn Wilk. Our lovely flowers are donated by Jonathan and Heather Greenfield in memory of our dear friend and Linda's mother, Dottie Reitzes. Current details of everything going on in congregational life can be found on our website, in our monthly newsletter, The Messenger, and in the semi-weekly email notifications we send out to membership. I'd like to remind everyone, in order to free up our sanctuary space to be ready to welcome our Allen neighbors for Bubby's Bakery, our last Friday of the month, Torah Shabbat, will convene in the Mir Center. Rabbi Gross's fourth Sunday Lifelong Learning Series will be this Sunday, January 25th at 10 a.m., discussing the topic Firing Line, Ask the Rabbi, in the Mir Room. Bubby's Bakery will be Sunday, February 1st from 9:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. The next concert will be Nearly Diamond, the Neil Diamond Tribute, on February 7th at 7:30. You can purchase tickets for the shows at jcmimusic.com. The next film, Running on Sand, will be on Sunday, February 15th at 2 p.m. You can buy tickets also at the website jcmimusic.com or at the door the day of the show. Next month's Women's Book Club will meet Tuesday, February 17th at 11 a.m. The book of the month is Frozen River by Ariel Lawton. You can find flyers around the building. Please note there is a date change if you've already purchased tickets for the Bee Gees concert. It will be on Saturday, March 14th at 7:30, not March 21st. Monday night bingo doors open at 5 p.m. The Chess Club meets every Tuesday from 9:30 to 12. Please contact Irv Pavlov. Thursday Mahjong is back from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Please bring your lunch. If you have any questions, please call Shirley Posner. The office is selling Memorial Yard-site candles. Do not forget to bring in food for those in the community less fortunate when you come on Fridays, or leave donation in the tzedakah box, and I thank you for that. And now, as we move to the conclusion of tonight's worship service, I invite to the bema our final honorees, Esther and Phyllis. Let us please reopen our prayer books to page 586 and rise together for our land.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our Kaddish prayer on page 598 is a tribute on this Shabbat to my friend Shar Friedman, laid to rest this afternoon on the other side of the state, whose families, in spite of the physical and emotional exhaustion of the day, may be distanced davening with us and following along, and we blow them a kiss and wish them well. We name as well these, precious to members of our congregants whose families observe yet the month of Shloshim. They haven't been taken from our midst within the past month. Edith Yorks, Tamba Weissman, Bernard Blutfeld, and Henry Berner. And we name as well these, the anniversaries of whose death were observed during the week, now ending. Celia Bittman, Charlotte Kahn Edinger, Abraham Glassgold, Leah Katz, George Coble, Francis Leifer, Beatrice Ostrow, Barney Parrish, Dorothy Kahn Reitzis, Edward Sakes, my grandmother Sidney Schwartz, Esther Solomon, Reva Weiner, and Avelut and Yartzeit in addition. Zichronam livracha, may remembering them be always a blessing. Yitgadal, v'yitgadash shemei rabba, v'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, chayechon v'yomechon, chayei dechol bet Yisrael, v'agala v'yizman kari v'imru, amen. Yehi shemei rabba mavorach, l'olam ol mei ol maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudusha. Le'elamin kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran v'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shema shema. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Yehi shema v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. The maker of peace on high, make peace for us, for all Israel, and for those who mourn. And let us say, amen. And let's close this evening. Satellite Sidur, you're on page 12. In-house, page 626. Chazan, take us away with a little Ein Keloheinu action.
Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemokenu, Ein Kemoshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadonenu, Michemokenu, Michemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu.
Everyone turn to the person closest to you didn't come with and say, Shabbat Shalom.